It's become a dirty word because it hasn't benefited enough people. It's benefited a small number of people handsomely. So if you're in finance or you're in the sort of high-end manufacturing where you're producing something that's truly unique and you're competing not on price but on quality, then you're doing very, very well. If you started off with a lot of education and you were lucky enough to live in an affluent place, then globalization's been wonderful. But if you're in a place where you work with your hands, then suddenly you're now competing with much lower paid hands. If you live in Europe or North America, you're competing with much lower paid hands in places like Mexico, India, China, and so on. And most societies, including my own in the United States, have not done an adequate job cushioning people against the impacts. So people have lost jobs and they haven't gotten adequate help. They haven't gotten help retraining for new careers in areas that are growing. They haven't gotten sufficient help, at least in the United States, with unemployment benefits, housing assistance, and it's been very difficult for people. So naturally, in democratic societies, there's been a reaction to that, an angry reaction, and people are now looking for alternatives to the traditional order. Trump definitely presents a threat to the traditional order of international trade. I mean, he's threatened to brand China a currency manipulator and put punitive tariffs on a range of Chinese goods. That would potentially kick off a trade war between the two largest economies on earth. He's renegotiating NAFTA. He seems obsessed with bilateral trade deficits, those between two countries, which are not a very good measure of trading conditions and fairness. And if he actually follows through on some of these threats, I mean, already we see some signs that there's uncertainty in the business world that could constrain investment. But if he actually follows through, he could disrupt the supply chain and he could actually hurt the very people who he's trying supposedly to help. I mean, he's trying to help American Midwestern factory workers, but many of the people who work there are dependent upon global trade. I mean, there are lots of people who are making cars in places like Ohio and Michigan where their factories are actually getting components from around the world, and certainly from China and Mexico. And if he makes it too expensive to import those goods, some of those jobs will actually move out of the United States. Well, for Britain, it's almost certainly going to mean leaving the European single market, which threatens British exports. Britain sends 44% of its exports to the European Union. Outside of the European single market, it's conceivable that some of those goods will face tariffs that will make those goods less competitive on world markets. For British consumers, it already means much higher prices because the British pound has dropped significantly against both the euro and the dollar. For Europe as a whole, it means a lot of uncertainty, and it means that the European single market, which is the world's largest consumer market, it's a market of 500 million relatively affluent people, is going to be a little bit smaller. I mean, it's going to lose the world's fifth largest economy, Britain, and it means uncertainty that could slow investment and hiring.